Calaroga Shark Media.
A busy Monday on a busy week. I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. It was Saturday Night Live. Your host, Will Ferrell. Musical guest, Paul McCartney. Was it Lorne Michaels' last episode? We will find out. In the cold open, President Trump was visited by a ghost played by Will Ferrell.
Donald. Who's in here?
Don't worry, Donald. It's me, your best friend, Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey? But I thought you were dead.
I am, remember? I killed myself. Wink!
Now, interestingly enough, they posted that at 11:48 on the official SNL account. I mean, it just shows you how things have changed. You don't even need to watch the show. I quote-unquote watch SNL mainly through the clips on Sunday mornings. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, Will Ferrell, but at center stage, it's not Will Ferrell. It's Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers pretending to be Will Ferrell.
It really feels like coming home.
Hey, excuse me. What the hell do you think you're doing?
I think I'm hosting the show.
You're not the host. I am. You're Chad Smith of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. No, shut up. Shut up. Everyone shut up. What the hell is wrong with you? He pushed me down backstage. And I fell hard. Lorne had to give me mouth to mouth.
Jost and Shay did the annual joke swap, and I'll tell you what, I mean, it's always funny. I went to pull the clips, and then anything I pulled, I'm like, you know, in comedy, there's context, and if I just start playing like, oh, I thought this Colin Jost joke was funny, out of context, it's just not going to be good for me. So I'll just refer you to the internet if you want to find those. There's just, in isolation, it just doesn't work. Your musical guest, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, did not show up, so Paul did not collect the $3,000 from 50 years ago. Here's a little clip of Band on the Run.
Well, the rain's rolled it with a mighty crash, but we're glad into the sun. And the fast one said to the second one there, I hope you're having fun. Band on the run. Band on the run.
Paul is almost 84 years old. His voice not quite what it once was, but I did notice a different drummer on Band on the Run. I've seen Paul live many times over the years, and his drummer has been doubling his voice for decades, but this was a different drummer, so I don't know if that affects things or not. On the end credits, Paul played Coming Up. Now, there were some comments on the end credits that maybe Paul was overshadowing the cast saying goodbyes, like was it Cam Patterson's final episode of SNL? I think we know the answer. But I believe Coming Up was the first song Paul played on SNL, and perhaps the last song Paul plays on SNL. Eagle-eyed watchers noticed that the credits hung for a really long time, saying executive producer Lorne Michaels as Paul McCartney sang us out. Does that mean anything? Time will tell. In other news, Theo Von is shutting down concerns raised by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is worried about Theo Von's mental health. On a recent Joe Rogan Experience, Joe shared concerns about Von's recent behavior, including comments tied to suicide and Theo's use of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, commonly known as SSRIs. Theo Von has responded and said, "This is mostly cap. Sad to see this kind of stuff. I'm doing great. I'm a human being, which is a rocky ride, but I'm doing fine. Thanks." Hopefully Theo is doing okay. Jim Gaffigan announced that the digital version of his bourbon set, remember that? He did a special bourbon-themed comedy set late last year, I think that was. Well, that is now available on audio, wherever you listen to your digital comedy. Sad news. I don't like this one. I'm not going to gossip corner this one because this is just terrible, and there's a baby involved. Pete Davidson and Elise Hewitt have split. Initial reports said there have been points where they've split and gotten back together. The latest I saw was that they're not going to get back together. Davidson and Hewitt have a daughter, Scotty Rose, born December 12th, 2025. Scotty named after Pete's father, Scott Matthew Davidson. That's just all around sad. I don't even know what to say. Pete Davidson sold his Staten Island apartment at a $400,000 loss one day before the rumors emerged that he had split from Elise. The New York Post reported that a deal closed on May 13th, final sale price $800,000. Pete had paid reportedly $1.2 million in December 2020. Meanwhile, Pete is trying to sell that house in North Salem, New York. First listed at $2.5 million, then dropped to $2.27 million, dropped again in April to $2.15 million asking price. This brings us back to the rumored split. An insider told The Sun they're focusing 100% on Scotty, working out the best co-parenting situation as the top priority. An insider told The Sun Pete is selling his properties, including his upstate home and his Staten Island apartment, to open up funds as they move forward and figure out the next steps. Pete has been traveling so much for work, but Elise was craving more support from him at home after the daughter was born. It was very hard for him because obviously he has to work to make money. Something more fun than those last few stories. Triumph the Insult Comic Dog showed up on Stavy's World.
Everyone calls you Stavy, baby. Am I correct?
That's right, Triumph.
I understand that's because you look like someone rolled an infant around the barbershop floor. Am I right?
That's actually not right.
I'm kidding. I kid.
Of course. Thank you.
You're so likable. That's why you're a hit. You know, you have this magnetic personality.
Thank you.
And not just because your body has its own gravitational pull.
Drake's got a new album out. It's called Iceman. Why are you bringing that up, Johnny Mac? Well, Joe List and Mark Normand on their show Tuesdays with Stories said that when Drake was up shooting a video in Toronto, so was Shane Gillis. Is Shane Gillis in a Drake video? Stay tuned. Hey, everybody, just take my money. They're making a Weird Al Broadway musical. I'm there. Just take my money. It's called Dare to be Stupid, the Weird Al musical. The musical shockingly features the songs of Weird Al. One of the folks attached to this is Anthony King, who worked on Beetlejuice, which was fantastic. We are told the musical will feature songs including White and Nerdy, Amish Paradise, Eat It, Smells Like Nirvana, and Like a Surgeon. What, no fat? When you're only having seconds, I'm having 23rds. We're not going to have that line in this musical? Mr. Yankovic in a statement said, ever since I was a middle-aged man, I've always wanted to be part of the New York theater community. Plus, the one thing people always say about Broadway is that it's severely lacking in Weird Al-based entertainment, and I think this musical should fix that problem immediately. Producer Greg Noble said, beneath the absurdity and the joy is a show about creativity, individuality, and the freedom to be unapologetically yours. We couldn't be more thrilled to be working with Al and gang to bring Weird Al's singular word to the stage. Can't wait. Most of this week, we'll talk about Stephen Colbert, except Friday. Friday, we're just going to talk about Byron Allen, I guess. Last week, when the Strike Force 5 folks showed up, by the way, did you listen to the Strike Force 5 podcast? It sounded like garbage. I was so offended by this that I wrote about it on my Substack. Just, guys, record these things properly. What are you doing? It sounded horrible. Last week on The Late Show, the Strike Force 5 guys showed up. Late Nighter reports that preliminary Nielsen Live Plus same-day data said the episode drew 2.819 million total viewers and a whopping 231,000 people between 18 and 49. Now, let's break that apart. Let's do lazy math here. So we have 2.8 million people, and we subtract 231,000. So that's like 2.5 million people that watch the show are over 49. It's old people like me, or presumably 7-year-olds. I mean, no offense. That's why this thing isn't going on. Everybody's ancient like me. I'm 7 years out of that demo already. Boy, that happened fast. I remember being sad that day I graduated the 18 to 49s and again the 25 to 54s. Yikes. Anyway, 2.819 million total viewers was the Late Show's largest live plus same-day total viewer audience since January 26th, which was a Sunday night episode that aired after the AFC Championship game. For a normal episode, you'd have to go back to October 2024. Vice President Kamala Harris was the guest. Late Nighter says the last time they looked, an extended YouTube upload of their appearance racked up 3.2 million views. After the show, Jimmy Kimmel was asked if they will do more Strike Force 5 podcasts. Jimmy said, I can't imagine not keeping doing it. The appearance on the air with Steven went so well and was so much fun, it made me think we should do them in front of a live audience. Now, what's interesting is if you listen to the dynamic and everybody's saying the same thing, there's clearly a gang of 4 plus Jimmy Fallon. Fallon's like doing his own thing. He doesn't fit the vibe. The other guys, like in every group, there's like the friend that everyone's picking on. I feel like that's Fallon. So while it wouldn't shock me if there were some live shows, and Seth and Oliver already do things together regularly, I don't see Fallon being part of it. Maybe I'm wrong. As for the end of the Late Show, Kimmel said people are going to be losing jobs. Where do you go if you write jokes for a living? During the appearance, Jimmy Kimmel joked, you could host my show. That started a rumor that would actually happen. But Late Nighter reports, to my personal disappointment, that Jimmy Kimmel is taking the summer off. I personally think that is a strategic mistake, that Kimmel should stay in the chair this summer. Again, as I said before, I don't want to work this summer either. But boy, capture that audience. But the guest hosts are actually starting pretty soon. As soon as the Knicks win the NBA championship, or maybe someone else does, as soon as the Knicks win the NBA championship and the NBA finals are wrapped up, Kimmel will be taking the summer off, and Late Nighter says most of the guest hosts are already lined up. Strategic mistake, guys. Friend of the show, Jason Zinneman, writes for the New York Times. He asked David Letterman if David Letterman has a favorite memory from The Late Show. Dave said the band had barely quit playing, and they dismantled the set, and there were dumpsters on 53rd Street. I remember that happened. That was ugly. And I walked out of the building. I saw the detritus and the debris of my life at CBS being tossed into the dumpster. Now, that's not a pleasant memory. I don't know. Talk to somebody else. Yikes. Jason asked Dave about Late Night and said, we still have Jimmy, presumably Kimmel. We still have Seth. It's not completely dead on arrival, but I'd be surprised if it lasts more than a year or so, but it's such an easy, soothing format that it's got to stay on. Jason apparently reacted the same way I did, when you'd be surprised if Late Night survives another year? Letterman, well, maybe specific shows. I don't think it'll ever go away because it's just the best. It's humans talking to humans. Interesting tidbit here. Zinneman asked Letterman, could you imagine having Jay Leno as a guest on Dave's Netflix show? Dave said, we think about it from time to time. This is not a bad idea. In answer to your question, of course I would love to. I'm sorry, did I say love? Of course I can imagine having Jay. I mean, when I was a kid, he was the funniest man in comedy, so just based on that alone, why wouldn't you? Boy, can we make that happen? That would be amazing. Chicago Magazine caught up with Brian Stack, who has been with The Late Show since 2015. Prior to that, he wrote with Conan. Stack said the program's cancellation last July was a shock, but the mood has been very positive overall, despite everyone's sadness about it coming to an end. While I'm proud of certain jokes and bits I've tossed in over the years, I think the most fulfilling thing for me has been when I'm asked to perform in character or do voiceovers that help bring other writers' ideas to life. I've always loved riffing around with other writers and bouncing ideas back and forth in an improvisational way. A lot of us came from an improv background, including Steven, and we all love coming up with ideas collectively that we might never have come up with on our own. I'm proud that we did our best for the last 11 years to find humor in the events of the day, even when those events were far from humorous. They asked about the challenge of writing so much Trump material. Stack said he was just everywhere all the time for the last 10 years. That was something that none of us saw coming when the show started. I think the main challenge for all the writers, Steven included, has been trying to lighten the emotional load so many people carry around with them with Trump in the news 24/7 year after year. Trust me, we've always welcomed the chance to write about literally anything else, especially fun, silly stuff. On Conan shows, if we dealt with politics, it was usually in a very silly, cartoony way. I don't mean cartoony in a pejorative sense. I just mean that if Robert Smigel was doing his Clinton character, he played him more like a crazy good old boy. Chicago Magazine asked Stack, is a writer's day at The Late Show so much different than the Conan shows? Interesting answer. Stack said it is, actually. With Conan, would start a little later in the morning, maybe around 10:30 or 11, but would often be there until after midnight. I'd be on the 1 a.m. train home to the suburbs. At The Late Show, we tend to get in earlier and get a jump on the day's headlines and leave earlier, and we tend to work in pairs on monologue stories and things like that. Because Steven's show is much more monologue-centric, and there are big chunks of material about each story, we all work on the monologues as well as the other bits. I'd never been a monologue writer till I worked at Steven's show. Uh-oh, who's the better boss, Steven or Conan? More important, who's funnier? How are you going to answer that? Stack laughed and said, one of the funny differences between Steven and Conan is a lot of times you see Steven in the hallway or something, and he'll talk to you as Steven about something that's really going on. With Conan, in all my 18 years there, I rarely had more than 1 or 2 genuine conversations with him. He was doing some bit in the hallway, or he'd come in with his guitar or a silly cap on his head and start doing a bit for us. He was always so playfully abusive, and he only does it to people he likes or loves. If you don't know Conan, sometimes people think it's somehow coming from a real place, and it's not. I remember when I was leaving and asking for his blessing to go to Steven's show, he was so nice about it and generous and understanding, I was thinking, why does this feel so weird? Oh, this might be the first sincere conversation I had with him in 18 years. Steven can be hilarious too when he's kidding around with us, but it's different. He and Conan both come from big families, so I think they're used to giving crap. Another thing I love about both of them is they love it when other people give them crap. I don't want to overgeneralize, but in comedians, there's often a lot of self-doubt. When people give it back and nail you, it feels like you're in a warm bath. A lot more here. Maybe I'll save that for like a July 4th pre-record. You'll find the full piece in Chicago Magazine. Out today on Gorilla Comedy Plus, Emmy Blotnick's What's Her Secret? Jon Stewart still mad at Apple TV. On the weekly show, Stewart compared his time with the Apple folks to an abusive relationship John said, Apple made it untenable for us to continue doing our show, and then Apple fired me. Well, they didn't really fire me. They just told me to work there. I'd have to disown everything that I'd ever held dear, and so I left. That show went from September 30th, 2021 to October 2023. I think I watched half of one episode once and just wasn't John at his best. Stewart said of his time at Apple, you know what? It was self-care. I was walking out of what was becoming an abusive relationship, and if you've ever been in an abusive relationship with a multinational conglomerate, the hard part about breaking up with Apple is that all the breakup songs are on their technology. It's almost impossible to avoid. Very difficult. BBC comedy boss John Petrie says his genre competing with big-budget dramas at the BBC is like being the Prince Harry of the TV royal family. He says comedy has to fight harder than it should for attention, for status, and sometimes for survival. Hey, John Petrie, check out our sister podcast, Palace Intrigue. We talk about Harry all the time. You might like it. Petrie says he intends to camp outside new BBC Director General Matt Britton's office to make sure he understands just how vital it is that the BBC keeps backing comedy. Because the BBC does not back comedy to make money, we back it for laughs. Well, a sequel to that story, John Petrie was at the BBC Comedy Festival in Liverpool and announced 10 new and returning shows. Returning shows include Amandaland, Black Ops, Am I Being Unreasonable, Things You Should Have Done, Such Brave Girls, and Mammoth. Sitcom Two Doors Down comes back for an 8th series, and you can watch comedy on BBC iPlayer. I got 3 letters for you, V, P, and N. Also, you might want to Google the phrase London postal code. If you know, you know. That is your comedy news for today. I'll see you tomorrow.